My son told me he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, so I canceled the mortgage payment. 2 days later, I woke up to 18 missed calls lighting up my phone like a crisis alarm. And the thing is, I didn't answer. Not right away. I know that sounds cold, maybe even heartless, but please, listen to the whole story before you judge me. I never imagined things between my son and me would come to this. A simple Christmas visit turning into a breaking point neither of us could take back. Before I begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if stories like this stay with you, please like and subscribe. It truly helps me keep sharing the truths I've carried for years. My name is Linda. I'm 62 years old, and most of my life I've been nothing more and nothing less than a mother who tried. Tried to love, tried to provide, tried to keep peace, tried not to fall apart even when life gave me every reason to. For years, Christmas was our thing. My son Mark used to climb into my bed at 5 a.m. with messy hair and cold toes, begging me to get up so he could open presents. I can still hear his voice sometimes. Come on, Mom. It's Christmas. I'd pretend to be annoyed, but truthfully, I loved every second. When he grew older and moved to the city, Christmas became the one tradition that stayed. Sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with his girlfriends, sometimes with neighbors. It never mattered. We were together. Even after my husband passed 5 years ago, we kept that tradition alive. Christmas was the one day I never felt alone. So when he called me last December, 3 days before Christmas, his voice felt different. Not warm, not excited, just flat. He cleared his throat before speaking. Mom, listen, things are a little tight this year. We're not really doing a big Christmas. And we weren't exactly expecting you this time. That line stuck to my ribs like ice. We weren't expecting you. I remember the silence afterward, thick and humiliating, like I'd shown up somewhere I didn't belong. As if I was the one intruding on my own child's life. But I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't remind him of everything I'd done to help him keep that house when he was laid off. I just smiled through the pain he couldn't see over the phone and told him I understood. Because mothers do that. We swallow hurt like medicine. Still, something felt wrong. He didn't sound apologetic. More like relieved. Like pushing me out of the holiday made things easier for him. And it stung. It burned. So instead of wrapping gifts and baking cinnamon rolls like I always do, I drove home from town with a hollow chest and a quiet car. Snow falling in lazy flakes, radio humming old Christmas songs I couldn't bear to listen to. The whole ride I kept thinking, when did I become an obligation instead of family? That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The same table where Mark once spilled hot cocoa and cried about girls, where we carved pumpkins, where we planned his future. And I kept replaying his sentence. We weren't expecting you this time. Why? Who was he spending Christmas with instead? What changed? I didn't know then. But that wasn't the worst part. Because 2 days later, on Christmas morning, when he realized what I'd done, I woke up to those 18 missed calls. And that was only the beginning. After that phone call, the days leading up to Christmas felt slower than they ever had in my life. I kept myself busy, or at least pretended to. I baked gingerbread out of habit, though I had no one to share it with. I put on Christmas music, then turned it off because it made the house feel even emptier. I wrapped the one gift I bought for Mark, a wool coat he'd been eyeing, even though I wasn't sure he'd ever open it. My house is small, old, and full of memories. Every corner holds some piece of Mark's childhood, a pencil line on the wall marking his height at 10 years old, a dent in the door frame from when he raced his bike inside, even though I told him not to. A faded family picture above the mantel, my husband smiling with his arm around me, Mark's grin big and toothy before braces. We looked happy. We were happy. Sometimes I think the house remembers more joy than I do now. That week, the snow outside fell thicker and heavier. Christmas lights blinked from neighboring houses, warm yellows, playful reds, and greens. I watched families unload cars with gifts, heard children's laughter echo across the street. I told myself I didn't mind spending Christmas alone. I told myself it would just be one quiet year. But lies taste bitter when you're the one telling them. The truth? I missed my son. Mark used to come over on random Sundays just to talk. When he bought his first car, he drove straight to my house just to show it off. When he got laid off 2 years ago, he crashed on my couch for 3 months. I helped him apply for jobs, cooked his meals, paid his mortgage once, then twice. Then I just set up automatic monthly payments because he wasn't getting back on his feet as fast as he promised. He said, "Just until I'm stable, Mom. I'll pay you back." But bills have a way of turning temporary favors into permanent habits, and I never pushed him. I told myself mothers help. That's what we do. Still, something had changed recently. His calls became less frequent, shorter. He sounded distracted when we talked. He'd say, "I'm busy, Mom," or "I'll call you later," and sometimes he didn't. I tried not to take it personally. Kids grow up. They build their own lives. I kept telling myself that. But this time, this Christmas refusal, it felt personal. On Christmas Eve, I set the wool coat aside. I touched the fabric, soft, thick, perfect for winter. I thought he'd love it. Then I folded it and placed it back in the box. My heart felt heavy, like a snow-laden branch. That night, I made myself hot tea, sat by the window, and watched the snow fall under the streetlight. Peaceful, silent, beautiful, and achingly lonely. I thought about calling Mark just to hear his voice. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe. But I didn't call. I waited for him to call me. He didn't. Instead, I got a short text the next morning. Not a Merry Christmas, not a check-in, not even an invitation. Just, "Hope you're having fun. Talk later." Fun. I stared at those 3 casual sentences like they were written by a stranger, as if he truly believed I had someone else to spend Christmas with, as if it didn't matter whether I was alone. A mother shouldn't have to beg for a place in her son's holiday. That was the moment, not the phone call, not the text, when something inside me shifted. A small crack, barely noticeable, but real. A sense that maybe I gave too much for too long, and maybe he grew to expect it, not appreciate it. Still, I didn't know where things were truly heading. Because a discovery was waiting for me, one that would change everything I thought I knew about my son and about myself. The morning after Christmas, I woke up early out of habit. I guess years of preparing big family breakfasts leaves a mark on your internal clock. I made coffee, scrambled a couple eggs I barely touched, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the wrapped coat like it was a ghost of the Christmas I'd expected to have. That was when something nudged at me, curiosity, irritation, maybe a little heartbreak. Why wasn't I invited? Who was he spending the holiday with? If he truly wasn't expecting me, then who was he expecting? Families don't just cancel mothers out of thin air. Something didn't add up. That thought lodged itself in my mind and refused to leave. Later that afternoon, I decided to deliver the gift to Mark's house myself. Not to intrude, just to drop it off at the door. Maybe wave through the window like I used to. A small gesture. Somewhere inside me, I hoped he'd see my car, run out, hug me, say it was all a misunderstanding. Hope is foolish sometimes. But I drove anyway. The roads were slick with snow, the kind that makes everything look calm even when it isn't. His house sat at the end of a suburban street, nice enough but slightly worn. I knew it intimately. I'd helped him afford it after all. When he first bought it, he told everyone, I couldn't have done it without Mom. But gratitude fades when people start seeing help as a given instead of a gift. I parked a little ways down the street so I wouldn't look like I was showing up unannounced. I just planned to drop the present at the porch and leave. But as I walked closer, something stopped me cold. Cars. Multiple cars. 3 parked right in front of his house. 2 I didn't recognize. 1 I did. His girlfriend Emily's car. They'd been together about a year. Sweet girl at first, polite, shy. But lately she seemed distant, barely acknowledging me at Thanksgiving. She smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. Seeing the cars wasn't the strange part. It was the sound, faint at first, then clear. Laughter, clinking glasses, music, a party, a Christmas party, at my son's house, the house I helped keep. My stomach twisted. I froze at the edge of the driveway, gripping the gift like it might anchor me. Through the window I could see people moving inside. Friends maybe, co-workers, faces I didn't recognize. Christmas lights glowing warm across the room. Mark walked past the window, smiling, arm around Emily as she handed him a plate. He looked happy. He looked content. He looked like he didn't miss me at all. We weren't expecting you. No, they didn't want me. I took one step back, then another. My first instinct was to knock, to ask why, to remind him I exist, that I'm his mother. But pride, old, fragile pride, held me in place. I slowly set the wrapped coat on the doorstep, carefully, like placing down something fragile inside myself. Then I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't cry in front of his house. I waited until I was halfway home before the first tear broke loose. It wasn't anger then, just an emptiness so heavy it felt like it could sink me. The questions wouldn't stop. Why didn't he tell me? Was I embarrassing? Was I replaced? Was I only useful when he needed money? I wanted to believe there was another explanation. I clung to that thought the way a person clings to a lifeboat. But later that night, scrolling through social media out of habit, I found something that made my chest tighten. Emily's post. A cheerful picture, their living room full of guests, Mark holding a drink, Christmas tree glowing behind them. Caption: our first Christmas hosting. So grateful for everyone who could make it. Everyone. Except me. I stared at that picture far too long. I zoomed in until his smile blurred. Something in me cracked wider than before. Not rage yet, just realization. I wasn't unwanted by accident. I was excluded on purpose. And that was just the first clue. Soon, I would discover the real reason I was pushed aside. And that's when everything began to unravel, for him and for me. For 2 days, I replayed that moment in my mind, standing outside my son's warm, lively house while I sat alone in my cold car, watching strangers enjoy the holiday I once built for him. But the pain sharpened into something else. Curiosity, maybe even caution. Something was off. Why exclude me? Why hide the gathering? I needed answers, not out of revenge then, but out of hurt. And mothers know when something smells wrong. The following week, I decided to stop by Mark's house again. This time in daylight, no surprise visits, just a calm conversation. I practiced the words in the mirror like a woman preparing for a difficult surgery. I just want to understand why. Did I do something wrong? Talk to me. Gentle, soft, giving him room to be honest. When I arrived, I noticed a small stack of mail shoved halfway out of his mailbox. Bills mostly. One envelope stood out, the mortgage statement. The very mortgage I'd been paying automatically for over a year. A quiet reminder of how much I had done. He answered the door slower than usual. He looked tired, surprised, and something else I couldn't place. Guilt? Annoyance? Maybe both. Oh, hey, Mom, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. No hug, no warmth, just a neutral greeting, as if we were neighbors and not family. Can we talk? Simple words, heavy heart. Inside, the house looked different. New furniture, expensive TV, shiny gadgets. I noticed it right away because I knew Mark's finances. He wasn't buying this on his salary, unless someone else was helping, or he had stopped worrying about money because I was covering the biggest expense for him. He motioned to the couch, and we sat today. Emily walked in from the kitchen. She smiled, a polite, distant smile, and then she disappeared upstairs without a word. Not rude exactly, but dismissive, as if she wanted him to handle me. I asked gently, "Why didn't you invite me for Christmas?" Mark let out a long sigh. "Mom, it was just a small thing. We didn't want to make you drive so far in the snow. We thought you'd be better off relaxing at home." Relaxing? Alone? Funny word choice. That wasn't the worst part. I kept this line inside my head, knowing more was coming. As he talked, he avoided eye contact. His knee bounced. His fingers tapped his phone restlessly. He was lying, maybe not fully, but partially. I've known that boy since he was a heartbeat inside me. I knew when he wasn't telling the whole truth. He slipped up when he said, "It was mostly people Emily knows. They don't really know you." Mostly? Meaning not all? Meaning some did? Something didn't sit right. Before I could respond, a woman's voice drifted from upstairs, light and clear. "Mark, did you tell her about the refinance yet?" My stomach dropped. "Refinance? Tell me what?" He froze. His face stiffened, like a child caught sneaking cookies. He muttered something like, "I'll explain later," but I wasn't moving until I heard the truth. "Mark," I said quietly, controlled, "what refinance?" He swallowed hard. His voice was barely above a whisper. We refinanced the house last month to get some cash. Emily wanted to renovate and maybe plan a trip. The payments increased a bit, but since you were covering it..." My ears rang. My chest tightened. Since I was covering it. Not thank you. Not we'll take over soon. Not even we appreciate it. I was a bank, not a mother, and he had used my help to take more money out. I sat there in silence while his words sank in like poison. He expected me to keep paying without question. Christmas wasn't about weather or space. They didn't want me there because I wasn't part of their life anymore, only their finances. That realization hit like ice water down my spine. He tapped his foot, waiting for me to react. Emily peeked down the stairs, watching. I saw no shame in her eyes, only calculation. In that moment, something inside me settled. Not anger, clarity. They didn't exclude me from Christmas accidentally. They excluded me because I wasn't useful to the holiday, only to the mortgage. And right then, I knew something had to change. Not for them, for me. Because what I found next would lead to the moment I made the decision they never thought I'd make. The decision that ended with 18 missed calls. I left Mark's house that day without raising my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for an explanation. I simply stood up, smoothed the front of my coat, and told him I'd talk to him later. My calmness seemed to confuse him, maybe even scare him a little, because I wasn't reacting the way he expected a mother to. Inside, though, I was shaking. Not from rage, from realization. For the first time in my life, I saw my son not as the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, but as a grown man who looked at me like a financial safety net, not family. When I drove home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want noise. I wanted my thoughts loud and clear. Snowflakes tapped against the windshield like soft reminders that winter doesn't apologize for being cold. People don't either. That night I sat with my laptop at the kitchen table, same place where we decorated cookies for decades, and I opened my bank statements. I scrolled through automatic transfers, bills, and mortgage payments. Numbers don't lie. $1,650 every month. Sometimes more when insurance was added. It had been coming out of my account like clockwork. I whispered to myself, I've been paying for a house I'm no longer welcome in. Hearing it aloud hurt more than thinking it. I pulled up my email. Months earlier, I remembered Mark asking for my login to something just to help set up the paperwork, he'd said. He had access to the mortgage account. My stomach sank. How long had I been in the dark? What else had they changed without telling me? A small voice in me wanted to call him, demand answers, shout, cry. But another voice, steadier, older, wiser, spoke louder. Stop giving more than you receive. So I made tea. I lit a candle. I let myself feel the hurt fully, like a wound being cleaned so it can heal. I stared at my wedding photo, my husband's smile steady, kind. He would have known what to do. He always told me, love is not measured in sacrifice alone. Funny how we remember advice long after the person is gone. I opened the mortgage portal. My cursor hovered over cancel recurring payment. My hand didn't shake. Not this time. But I didn't click it yet. Instead, I opened a notebook, one I hadn't written in since the funeral, and I started planning. Slowly, carefully, like someone rebuilding their dignity piece by piece. 40% planning, 30% reflection, 30% resolve. Step 1, review finances. Step 2, protect my savings. Step 3, remove responsibility that was never mine to bear forever. And step 4, the hardest, let Mark face adulthood without hiding behind me. The more I wrote, the calmer I felt. Motherhood teaches softness, but life teaches boundaries. I had given years of support, emotional, financial, unconditional. But unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional sacrifice. At around midnight, I closed the notebook. The house was quiet in that peaceful way silence holds you when you've made a decision. I walked to the mantel and touched Mark's childhood photo with my fingertips. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because love without respect turns into use. The next morning, I brewed coffee and sat at my computer. My heart was steady. I clicked cancel recurring payment. A confirmation popped up. Are you sure? I whispered, yes. And I clicked. Just like that, for the first time in over a year, Mark's mortgage was his responsibility again. I didn't tell him right away. I wanted him to discover it naturally, not as revenge, but as reality. I spent that day cleaning, playing old music, reclaiming my space. A weight lifted from my chest, gentle but real. I felt lighter, like a woman who finally remembered she had a life outside of giving. But a part of me wondered how long it would take before he noticed, before he felt the absence of something he took for granted. Little did I know, it wouldn't take long at all. And when the first call came, I almost didn't answer. It took one billing cycle, just 1 month after I canceled the payment. I had almost forgotten about it, or maybe I was pretending to. I spent January focusing on myself for once. I joined a local book club, started walking every morning, even picked up crocheting again. I felt like I was relearning how to live without measuring my worth by how much I could give. Then, one cold Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Mark. I stared at the screen, my heart thumping somewhere between dread and strange calm. I let it ring out. A minute later, another call. Then a text. Mom, can you call me ASAP? Sure. Abrupt. No warmth. This wasn't a check-in. This was a need. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I made tea, sat down, and waited. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again, twice. My stomach tightened, but I still didn't answer. Then Emily called. That surprised me more. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, a long message popped up. Mark, the mortgage didn't go through. The bank charged late fees. Why wasn't it paid? Did something happen? There it was, reality knocking. For a moment I just stayed at the words, the panic behind them, the assumption that I must have messed up, that the world broke only when I stopped holding it up. I typed slowly. Me, I canceled the payments last month. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, Mark, but why? We counted on that. You should have told me. Should have told him. Not thank you for paying for so long. Not I'm sorry for taking advantage. Just expectation. My hand didn't shake this time. I called him, not out of obligation, but out of strength. He answered instantly. Mom, what do you mean canceled? You can't just do that. His voice, frantic, sharp. Like I'd taken something from him instead of giving something back to myself. I inhaled. Mark, I've paid your mortgage for over a year. You refinanced without telling me. You held a Christmas party without me. I realized I'm not part of your life, just your bank account. Silence. Heavy. Then defensiveness. That's not fair, he snapped. We were going to tell you eventually. Eventually, I repeated softly. A word that means never unless forced. I could hear Emily talking in the background, tense, rushed whispers. Then she grabbed the phone. Linda, this is really sudden. We thought you were okay with helping. I answered honestly. I was okay with helping. I'm not okay with being excluded. She went quiet. Mark jumped back in, voice raised now, panic edging panic. Our payment is due tomorrow. We don't have enough to cover it. I said nothing. He filled the silence like drowning fills lungs. Mom, please, just pay this month. We're figuring things out. We need time. There it was, need. Not love. Not connection. I spoke clearly, without trembling. It's time for you to handle your own home. You're an adult. You made decisions, refinancing, hosting, independence. This is part of that. He exhaled sharply. I can't believe you do this. On purpose. On purpose, I repeated. No, I did it for purpose. For myself. His voice cracked, first time I heard real fear. We could lose the house. I closed my eyes. Pain twisted inside me, not satisfaction, just bittersweet truth. Then manage your finances. Work more. Downsize. Budget. But don't rely on me without including me. He begged then, not dramatically, but quietly. Mom, please, we need you. Those words, once comforting, now stung. I replied gently, I needed you on Christmas. Silence. Heavy. Final. He didn't know what to say. Calls continued for 2 days. 2 days of missed calls stacking up like unanswered history. 18 missed calls. Just like on Christmas. But this time, roles reversed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't pick up. The calls slowed eventually, not because the situation resolved, but because reality settled in. You can't beg forever when a bill keeps climbing. For nearly a week after those frantic messages, I lived in a strange quietness. My phone no longer buzzed every hour. My house no longer felt like a waiting room for disappointment. I had space to breathe, space to think, space to feel everything I ignored for years. I spent mornings walking through the park, watching the snow melt into patches of wet earth. I began cooking dinners just for myself, soups, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. I even went to the library one afternoon and came home with 5 novels, the kind I used to devour before life became a series of obligations. Peace didn't come overnight, but it came in pieces, like someone sewing a quilt from scraps of self-respect. A few days later, Mark finally texted again. Mark, we managed to make the payment, but it was tight. We need to talk. Not a thank you, not an apology, just talk. Still, I agreed. Not out of guilt, out of curiosity, maybe even hope. A child is still a child, even when grown. We scheduled to meet at a small cafe halfway between us, neutral ground. The day of the conversation, I wore the scarf my husband bought me years ago, soft blue wool, comforting against my skin. When I arrived, Mark was already seated, fingers drumming the table. Emily wasn't with him. Good. Some things require mother and son alone. He looked tired, not angry this time, humbled. His eyes met mine differently, like a man realizing the safety net beneath him might not return. I'm not mad, he started quietly. Just shocked. I didn't realize how much you were carrying. For the first time in months, I heard sincerity. Not entitlement, not expectation, just truth. I nodded. I enabled it. That part is on me. He blinked, surprised. Maybe he expected blame. But growth requires honesty, on both sides. I should have invited you, he said next, voice low. Christmas felt wrong without you. Everyone asked why my mom wasn't there. I lied. I said you were busy. His eyes glistened and he looked down. It struck me then, he did think of me that day. Maybe guilt, maybe regret, maybe both. Emily, I learned later, suggested a young friend's only Christmas to avoid feeling judged. Mark went along with it. Stupid? Yes. Cruel? Maybe not intentionally. He continued, I got comfortable. Too comfortable. I thought you'd always help. I never thought about the burden. There was the truth, raw, simple. I placed my hand over his. I will always be your mother, but I can't be your bank. I want to be invited into your life, not just your expenses. He swallowed hard, nodded. I understand. It didn't fix everything instantly. Life doesn't work like movie endings, but it opened something, a door left locked too long. He promised to handle his finances responsibly. He and Emily downsized some plans, cut back on spending. They even got part-time work temporarily to manage the refinance cost. It wasn't easy, but it was adulthood. Weeks passed, and something unexpected happened. Mark began calling just to talk, not to ask, not to take. just to hear my voice. We started having Sunday lunches again. Simple meals, laughter returning like spring after a long winter. Emily apologized too, though cautiously, and we began rebuilding something fragile but real. I didn't reinstate the mortgage payments, and he never asked again. Instead, one afternoon months later, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a receipt, proof he'd paid 3 months of mortgage on time, by himself. His handwriting scribbled across the top. "Thank you for teaching me to stand." It didn't erase the hurt, but it healed it slowly, like soft light filling a dark room. Sometimes love means giving. Sometimes it means stepping back so someone can learn to walk without leaning on you. I learned that being good doesn't mean being used. And being a mother doesn't mean sacrificing self-respect. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. And that was enough. Looking back now, I can see the whole picture with a clarity I didn't have while standing inside it. At the time, everything felt raw, like a bruise pressed too often. But distance has a way of softening edges and revealing lessons beneath the hurt. If you asked me whether canceling those mortgage payments was revenge, I'd say no. It was a boundary, one I should have set earlier, one that taught us both what love without respect turns into: dependence, not family. Because real love isn't about how much you give, it's about how deeply you're valued when you're no longer giving. I needed Mark to see me as a mother again, not a safety net, not a financial cushion, a person. And through all the pain, distance, and those 18 missed calls, we eventually reached a place where we could meet each other honestly. Not perfectly, but honestly. I learned that I could love my son without surrendering pieces of myself. I learned that no can be an act of love. I learned that motherhood doesn't expire when a child grows up, but expectations must. Now, months later, our relationship feels different, healthier, sturdier. He invites me over without me asking. We cook dinner together sometimes, and yes, last Christmas we celebrated side by side. No parties without me, no secrets, no silent heartbreak behind frosted windows. Just a small dinner, quiet laughter, and a mother and son rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. He paid for that Christmas meal himself. I didn't offer. He didn't expect me to. And it warmed me more than any gift ever could. Sometimes I still see the wool coat I bought him. He wears it often. The first time I saw him in it, he hugged me and said, "It feels like home." And maybe that's what we became again, a home for each other, not built on money, but on understanding. To anyone listening who's ever given more than they received, who's been overlooked, taken for granted, or treated like a resource instead of a heart, I hope my story reminds you of this. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to protect your peace. And you are allowed to expect love, not just gratitude. If someone only values you for what you provide, then they don't truly value you. Sometimes it takes distance, or silence, or 18 missed calls for others to realize the weight you've been holding for them. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let them carry it themselves. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Even after everything, I don't regret being generous. I only regret forgetting myself in the process. But now I know better. And better late is still better. Final thought. Love is strongest when it is chosen freely, not relied upon blindly.